Okay, here we go. So welcome all to our New Perspectives series, the first of the year. Here we have a new series that's Savitri, a legend and a symbol. And this series is dedicated to this grand creation and the promise of a new creation. Some of its many aspects in this 8-part series will be covered from a psychological, a philosophical, scientific, linguistic, and spiritual perspective by multiple panelists. In this year of the 150th birth anniversary of Aurobindo, the LaGrasse Aurobindo Integral Life Center here in Fountain Inn, South Carolina, pays homage to his life and his work. So I'm Rade. I'm joined by my colleague and our speaker today, Vladimir Yatsenko. And we thank you all for joining us again for this first webinar. Vladimir will be speaking on the story of Mahabharata and how it is interpreted by Aurobindo. There are many elements, he says, of the story which will highlight a deeper understanding of Vedic symbolism. The comparison of these two poems may help to answer the question why Aurobindo chose this legend to convey his own experiences and those of the mother, and how it represents the major concepts of integral yoga. I believe you probably all know Vladimir, but let me just formally introduce him. Vladimir holds a master's degree in general and theoretical linguistics and in Sanskrit language and literature, as well a PhD in Indian philosophy. He is a scholar and instructor of Sanskrit and an educator and researcher in Vedic and Vedantic studies. Vladimir is the director of our Institute for Applied Research and Integral Studies here at the LaGrasse Center in Fountain Inn, South Carolina. So before handing it over to Vladimir, we would just like to make this webinar today as interactive as possible. So please, if you would at any point like to join and ask questions or engage in discussions, you can either raise your hand and we can bring you over as a panelist, or put your Q&A in the box, and perhaps, Vladimir, we can even be answering those questions as you go if they're relevant to the topic that you're speaking on. So with that, Vladimir, let me hand it over to you.
Thank you, Radhe. Yes, so today I was thinking how to at all speak on Savitri a bit, because Savitri is the very quintessential knowledge of integral yoga. It is the message of the future for humanity, and it is coming from the immemorial past. So in the story of Savitri, which is narrated in Mahabharata, we see that it is narrated by Markandeya to Yudhishthira and other Pandavas, where Yudhishthira asks Markandeya, was there ever in the history of humanity someone who suffered so much as Draupadi? And the answer was quite direct. Yes, there was someone. She was Savitri. And he starts his story that it was long ago, even for Markandeya, who is the immortal rishi, and who gained his immortality from Lord Shiva from the beginning of this Kalpa in the first Manvantara. And even for him, this is an ancient story. So he starts with a narration of the king Ashvapati, and that Ashvapati was loved by all and was a very just and true king in his kingdom, but he didn't have a progeny and he suffered a lot. Santapam upajagmivan, it is quoting from the story. He suffered a lot from that he didn't have a prince to continue his kingdom, though his kingdom was totally successful. On the other hand, we have the King Dyumatsena, who became blind, and because of that lost his kingdom and was banished to the forest with his wife and small son. And so his son Satyavan grew in the forest with the blind king banished from his kingdom. So on one hand, we see that we have Ashwapati, who has the kingdom, but doesn't have a prince, the progeny to continue his ruling. And on the other hand, we have the king who has the son, has the progeny, but doesn't have the kingdom. So, and this is the symbolism which actually highlights all those Vedic symbols of Dyumatsena and Ashwapati, of the king of knowledge and the king of power. The king of power has his grip over manifestation, whereas the king of knowledge lost his presence in the kingdom. And this Satyavan, who is the soul of humanity, has no future because he has no kingdom. And so he has to basically die within 1 year. So Ashwapati needs a progeny. He calls to the gods. He starts doing his tapasya. For 18 years he did his tapasya. And goddess Savitri was pleased with his tapasya and appeared to him in one of the yagyas and was ready to give him any boon. So she said, ask any boon. And he said, I want many sons. And she said, yes, I know about this. And we already discussed this with Brahma. Brahman is her husband. And he grants you one daughter. And please don't argue about this. So Ashwapati understood that it is very auspicious. And he didn't argue, and he accepted the gift. This is in the story of Mahabharata. So when he accepted the gift, the daughter was born, and she was beautiful, like they compared her with Devakanya iti. And she was so beautiful and so true in her nature that nobody dared to ask her hand in marriage when she was 16. So the king was a little bit sad, and he said, go and find your mate in the world. Wherever you find, whoever it will be, I will accept him. Only he has to be of the same qualities you have. And she went for the journey, and in Mahabharata this journey is not depicted. Yes, it is described in Sri Aurobindo's Savitri. We have the whole book of love where she meets Satyavan and how they meet and how they discuss things and how they recognize each other. And after deciding that it is her mate, she comes back, and in the meanwhile, the divine Rishi Narada comes down from his heavenly place to Ashwapati's palace and discusses with him the affairs of the kingdom. And he says, your daughter is already ready to be married. Where is she? Did she find a suitor? And Ashwapati says, oh, now she is arriving. Let us ask her, did she find him or not? So Savitri announces Satyavan, king of Dyumatsena, that she found the suitor. And Narad objects to it, and he says that the suitor is good, but he has one fault, one dosha. He will die within 1 year, and nothing you can do about it. And then they tried to convince Savitri to find other mate for herself, but she said, no, I can choose only once, my heart chooses only once, and if I am given 1 year to live, I also know how to do it, how to live 1 year. So they cannot convince her, so they altogether move to the forest where Dyumatsena with his wife and Satyavan live. And there they meet with Dyumatsena. Dyumatsena resists. It's in the Mahabharata story. He resists. He doesn't want to accept this proposal because he says they have nothing to offer to Savitri. And Savitri is so beautiful, so tender, and so royal. What would they give her in this forest? And they lived like hermits there. So Ashwapati says, please do not reject our proposal. It's very important for us. And then he says something interesting. He says that long ago I wanted to become family with you, Ashwapati. So Dyumatsena, the Lord of the divine mind, of the divine knowledge, wanted to become one family with the Lord of the divine power. But because he lost his sight in his kingdom, he didn't dare to even think about it. So this was kind of envisioned before by the Lord of the luminous knowledge, the divine knowledge. Dyumatsena, yes, Dyumat means light, Sena, army, the army of luminous rays of knowledge. That's his name. And Satyavan means the one who possesses truth, the truthful one. Savitri is the goddess or the daughter of the sun, the incarnate word. We have the Savitri or Gayatri mantra, and that is Savitri, yes, the daughter of the sun, the action of the divine truth of the supermind. So the marriage took place in the forest, and Savitri stayed in the forest, and she knew that within 1 year Satyavan should die, and so every day she counts and remembers this. And before the time was up, she decided to make the sacrifice, and it was her, I think it was solstice, winter solstice, 3 days. She stood and didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't sit. She was standing like a pillar for 3 days and nights. That was her offering before the day of Satyavan's death should come. So when the day has come, she said immediately that I want to go with you, because Satyavan was ready to go to the forest to fetch some fruits and some wood for the fire. And he didn't like the idea, so he sent her to his parents to ask permission from them. If they would permit, he would accept. So that is in Mahabharata story. It's kind of very cute. She goes to them, and they also object. You were 3 days and nights without food and drink, so please rest, our dear child. And she says to them, do you remember me asking you anything during this year? They said, no, we don't remember you asking anything. And now I am asking, she says. They understood that this is very important and very auspicious, so they allowed her to go with Satyavan. So when they go to the forest, Satyavan is fetching wood, and then he feels not totally healthy. He feels as if the thousands of needles are piercing his head and his body, and he feels dizzy and lies down on the lap of Savitri. And then she sees that they are not alone. She could see that someone is standing behind, the dark figure with red eyes. And it is Yama himself, and the whole dialogue starts. Yes, she asks Yama why he came and not sent his messengers. Usually he sends his messengers to fetch the soul. And he says that this soul is very dear to him, so he could not trust anyone to fetch it. So he came himself. So then she sees that the soul was separated from Satyavan's body and moves with Yama away. So she follows them and speaks to Yama and declares to him the truth of Dharma. Every time she speaks, Yama is impressed and gives her a boon one by one. So all these boons he gives are quite important, and the order of them also is very important. So the first boon she asks is the sight of Dyumatsena, of Satyavan's father. So he grants her the sight of Dyumatsena. Then she again follows. He asks her to leave, and she is not leaving. She says, I cannot leave my husband. I'm like the thread in the needle. I'm following where my husband goes, and so on. And then she again speaks about the Dharma, and he hears this beautiful speech, this beautiful voice, as he describes. And he says, oh, so ask any other boon and go back. Accept the life of Satyavan. He always says the same phrase, accept the life of Satyavan, any boon. She says, I want the kingdom of Dyumatsena back. So again, the two boons for Dyumatsena, his sight and kingdom. And then she follows him again and again, the same story, and she speaks about the true beings and the satsang, how it is important to be among true souls, how it is illumining our behavior and so on. And he is this beautiful diction, and again very impressed, and says again, choose any boon except the life of Satyavan. And she says, give me 100 sons for Ashwapati. Now finally Ashwapati gets his many sons through Savitri. And then again the same story. She follows and she speaks to him she starts to speak about his nature. Interestingly, that he is the Lord of the Sun. He is the son of the Lord of the Sun. He is Vaivasvata Yama. He comes from the luminous supermind. So, and then he's also very impressed with her knowledge and tells her, choose any boon except the life of Satyavan. And she says, give me 100 sons from Satyavan. And interestingly, Yama accepts this. He gives her 100 sons from Satyavan, but not the life of Satyavan. Many consider this to be a trick by Savitri, but I don't think so, and we will look into it more closely in a minute, why it is not a trick. And so she follows again and reveals the higher revelation of knowledge of the truth, and then he is so impressed that he says, so choose any boon, and he forgets to say, accept the life of Satyavan. And immediately Savitri budges in with the phrase, may Satyavan live. This is the first phrase. She doesn't go into nitty-gritty explanations. She jumps on this. And then he says, okay. The uniqueness of this story, and he gives her back the life of Satyavan. Satyavan comes back to her, and then he gives her additional boon, which is very unique and very unexpected. Aurobindo doesn't mention this boon in his Savitri. He gives her 400 years of life with Satyavan. And 400 is actually a symbolic number. In the Semitic tradition, it means the fullness of realization. It's actually the supramental manifestation. It's the number 22, the last arcanum of the system, which is called Mysterium, where the Divine Mother, totally naked in the full sun, dancing with one hand she touches the sky, and with one foot she touches the earth. She connects heaven and earth in this living symbol. This is this story, the legend, which Aurobindo uses as a symbol for narration of his vision or his experiences, his life, actually. And a long time he was looking for the language suitable for to express his experiences. He couldn't find proper language. He already studied Upanishads, he already knew very well the Gita, and but still that was not the language he was looking for. And when he discovered the Veda, as he says, then he discovered this symbolic language, poetic language, which he could use to describe his highest experiences. And this language, Vedic language, mantric language, the same imagery he is using in Savitri. So this is basically the introduction which I wanted to make, very basic, but still. Now I will go through my bullet points one by one, which I wanted to highlight and to make the kind of, to us to pay attention to these differences. So, yeah, few elements which I would like to highlight is that what is unique in the story of Savitri is that it is standing out from the epic style. The style of epos is usually the prediction at the beginning, and then we see how this prediction comes into power. We see how it comes into life, how it is being realized. So it is never otherwise. So prediction means that it will happen the way how it was predicted, only we have to see how it unfolds, all the elements, how it comes to that point. And that is the epic style, and it's very interesting to see how it happens. When we read Savitri's story, I read it in 1986, first time in Sanskrit, being a student of Sanskrit language in the Indian Philology Department in St. Petersburg University. I was surprised to see, because you expect this to happen. I didn't know yet the story of Savitri at that time, what it means, but I was surprised that the prediction did not happen. The prediction by Narada, Deva Rishi, nothing you can do about it, better to choose another suitor, did not happen. And nobody helped Savitri to do this, to undo this doom. She herself did everything with her will, and Aurobindo uses this phrase in his Savitri, fate shall be changed by an unchanging will. This is Savitri, it is her unchanging will which is changing the fate of humanity. There are a few more things which are worth mentioning. It is that Markandeya Rishi himself is the immortal Rishi, ever young, 16 years old always. And he is from the first Manvantara of this Kalpa, which was long ago, many million years back. He tells the story of Savitri to Yudhishthira. Markandeya himself was a worshipper of the Divine Mother, and we know his famous Devi Mahatmya in Markandeya Purana. This is a mantric poetry dedicated to the Divine Mother, which sounds like this: Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Matri Rupena Sanstita, that goddess which in all beings stays in the form of the Mother. Namastasye, 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 Namo Namaha. Salutation to her, salutation to her, salutation to her, salutation, salutation, or surrender, surrender. So this is a very famous text which Mother herself uses to invoke herself and Sri Aurobindo. You know this famous mantra where Mother chooses 3 passages from Devi Mahatmya of Markandeya. Is it a coincidence or maybe not? We do not know, because Mother exactly represents the or is spoken of in Sri Aurobindo's Savitri as Savitri. She is Savitri in Sri Aurobindo's epic. And he himself is Ashwapati, the one who called to Savitri to come down and to make this continuation of his efforts to change the humanity possible in the future. So this is a kind of interesting information. There are a few more things which I would like to mention. Savitri belongs to this circle of the major myths of immortality. There are 5 major myths. Maybe a few here and there we can find, but they are not so direct as these 5. One is of Nachiketas in Katha Upanishad, other is Shunakshepa from Aitareya Brahmana. There is another Samudra Manthana, churning of the ocean in Vishnu Purana, and Savitri and Satyavan in Mahabharata, and Markandeya story in Puranas. So these 5 myths of immortality, of which Savitri has its own very prominent place. So why did Sri Aurobindo choose this story for narrating his own experiences? Yeah, there are a few differences before that I would like to highlight, and that is that Sri Aurobindo never mentions Yama in his story. He mentions all the names. Even the mother of Savitri, Malavi, he mentions all the names in Savitri, Ashwapati, Dyumatsena, Satyavan, Savitri, Malavi, but he never mentions that the Lord of Death or Death is Yama. And this is quite significant. Long ago we discussed this with Natkarni. He was wondering why he never uses Yama in his story. He uses all the names. And the reason for this is that Yama is not really the Lord of Death, so to say. He's the first who died and found, first about humanity, who died and found the way back to the psychic plane from which the whole humanity came. And there is a very famous hymn in the Rig Veda of Yama and Yami, where they separate their responsibilities. Yama goes to heaven, Yami stays on earth, and they provide the safe passage for the souls from this incarnated state to heaven and from heaven to incarnated state. This is their major function. So Yama is not the killer of the body, he is the savior of the soul. So he sends always his Sarameya dogs to fetch the soul. Why? Because they are protecting the soul in its journey through the dangerous passage to heaven. So when we leave our body, it seems, then the infinite varieties of moving wherever we could go, we have to find our way back. And we need a help for this. So Yama helps the soul to find a way back to the origin, where the soul will rest and will make a new decision to come down and to continue its journey through reincarnations. And when soul comes down, Yami helps the soul to find a way to earth and to find the proper place for embodiment according to the plan of the soul, in accordance with the plan of the soul. So this is something why Sri Aurobindo didn't use Yama as the Lord of Death. The Lord of Death is a different figure in Savitri. And he totally differently shows the debate of love and death. When Savitri speaks to death, it is a very different dialogue than it is found in the story of Mahabharata. So she does not receive the boons from death in Sri Aurobindo Savitri. She receives the boons from the divine voice comes. And in Mahabharata, it is Yama who grants her the boons. In Savitri, she destroys the Lord of Death, actually. He was devoured by the light, and then she gave him the right to continue his work and to help Savitri, to help the divine to continue with the work of the divine in manifestation. So this is the difference between the major figure, the Lord of Death. 400 years I already mentioned. The meeting of Savitri and Satyavan are also not depicted in Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, Savitri arrives in the palace where Narada is asking her, and that time only, first time we find out from her that she found Satyavan and that Satyavan is her chosen one. So we don't see the whole. In Sri Aurobindo Savitri, we have the whole book of love, which is very beautiful when they meet, how they meet, what they speak, what they say to each other. The whole book is dedicated to their meeting. There are many more things which Sri Aurobindo introduces, which are not in Mahabharata. The dialogue between the mother of Savitri and Narada also is not there, which is very famous. Sri Aurobindo dedicates to it the whole canto in the book of Fate. And many more things. The whole book of yoga, of mothers, of Savitri's yoga is not in Mahabharata. Sri Aurobindo dedicates the whole book 7 to it. And of course the book 2, the book of the traveler of the worlds, is Ashwapati's yoga, Ashwapati's knowledge, which is totally omitted in Savitri of Mahabharata. So here we come to Sri Aurobindo's note. It is taken from the letter. The tale of Satyavan and Savitri is recited in Mahabharata as a story of conjugal love conquering death. But this legend is, as shown by many features of the human tale, one of the many symbolic myths of the Vedic cycle. Satyavan is the soul carrying the divine truth of being within itself, but descended into the grip of death and ignorance. Savitri is the divine word, daughter of the sun, goddess of the supreme truth, who comes down and is born to save. Ashwapati, the lord of the horse, her human father, is the lord of tapasya, the concentrated energy of spiritual endeavor that helps us to rise from the mortal to the immortal planes. Dyumatsena, lord of the shining hosts, father of Satyavan, is the divine mind, here fallen blind, losing its celestial kingdom of vision, and through that loss its kingdom of glory. We will come to these two. They are important for the boons. Still, this is not a mere allegory. The characters are not personified qualities, but incarnations or emanations of living and conscious forces with whom we can enter into concrete touch, and they take human bodies in order to help man to show him the way from his mortal state to a divine consciousness and immortal life. And this is, I think, is the gist of the very meaning of Sri Aurobindo's and Mother's life. These are the conscious forces. They are not just emanations, they are incarnations of conscious forces who take human bodies to help us to find our way from the mortal state to the immortal life. So what is interesting that Mother brought her own story from the Semitic tradition, which she learned from Theon, Max Theon. And there were first 4 emanations, which were emanated from the Supreme to make a manifestation. One of them was consciousness in light. Here they are. Bliss, truth, and life. This is the picture by Huta, which is depicting this story. This is the story from Theon, from Semitic tradition, not from the Vedic. And interestingly enough, the very framework we find in Savitri, with these 4 great personalities of Savitri. That means first, consciousness in light, Dyumatsena, bliss, Ashwapati, who suffered a lot, could not continue his kingdom, falling into suffering. The truth, Savitri, which was beautiful maiden, divine maiden, who nobody could ask to be a partner with because she was so beautiful and so luminous. It is even said that her luminosity, her shining tejas, was preventing, it was like a fence for people to come close to her. They could not come close to her. She was so luminous in her truth and beauty. So the truth was unwanted. She was unmarried, not wanted, not asked for marriage. And Satyavan, who is the divine soul of humanity, is life, eternal life, which is destined to die. So here we have these 4 emanations in the Semitic tradition and 4 personalities in the story of Savitri. So what is happening here is interesting, because these boons, also they are 4, we speak about them as 4, but there were 5 boons, actually 6 in Mahabharata. There's the 6th one, 400 years, it means full realization, which is added to these major boons. So 2 boons to Dyumatsena, first, return of the sight, and return of the kingdom to Dyumatsena. The 3rd boon, the 100 sons of Ashwapati, and the 4th boon, 100 sons for Savitri and Satyavan, without life of Satyavan, interesting boon. And finally, the life of Satyavan. Yes, and the conundrum of the story of this giving her sons, but not the life, is in the following. I want to quote of the mother. This, the Savitri represents the action of the supermind. The supramental manifestation is to take place before the immortality can be gained. So without supramental manifestation, the immortality cannot be realized. And that's why the 100 sons of Savitri and Satyavan are granted before the life of Satyavan. There is a very interesting mentioning by the mother, this is her quotation, the capacity to know God can be achieved in the lower triplicity, the mind, the vital, and the physical, only with the supramental transformation. And this comes only just before the ultimate realization, which consists in becoming divine. So the last boon of the immortality can be given only after the transformation and ultimate realization, which Savitri represents. So I'm kind of coming to the end of my presentation because I want us to discuss certain things. Here is the scheme which I created specially for this purpose, to see what happened, what was before and what happened after. We have 4 great personalities We have knowledge power. So the king of knowledge, of the divine mind, is before marriage of Savitri and Satyavan is blind Dyumatsena who lost his kingdom. And the powerful Ashvapati has kingdom but has no future, and he is suffering from this. He cannot continue his effort to sustain and to develop the humanity in the direction of the divine realization. On the other hand, we have the knowledge power, the energy of the supermind, which is unasked, unmarried Savitri, though she is most beautiful. And it's quite an unusual exaggeration, because usually even Sita was wanted by many, or Damayanti, who was beautiful as heaven, they had many suitors. But in this case, she was so not only beautiful but luminous and divine that nobody felt that they had the right to come close to her. So in that kind of exaggeration, we can feel the meaning of it. So unmarried Savitri and dying Satyavan, these are the conditions before Savitri married Satyavan. When she married him and saved him from Yama, what do we have? We have seeing Dyumatsena with his kingdom back. We have happy Ashvapati, 100 sons to continue his efforts. We have married Savitri with 100 sons and 400 years of life for Satyavan and living Satyavan. So this is the result of that marriage. In the Semitic traditions, we have light turned into darkness. That is the fallen emanations, bliss turned into suffering, truth turned into falsehood. This is falsehood when Savitri is not wanted because there is no match for her truth, and life turned into death. So, and these four emanations are to be recovered, and Mother speaks about them in her life, which is quite remarkable. She dealt with these asuras, she calls them asuras. So the asura of darkness was converted into light, and asura of bliss into suffering into bliss. But asura of falsehood, that very asura who called himself the Lord of Nations in her story, who was the reason and the cause of the Second World War, and I think he is still surviving there like Sauron, and he still continues his falsehood. You can see it in the media and everywhere in the world nowadays, that the lies are becoming so used and prominent. So this asura was not converted yet. And the asura of death also was not yet converted. This is for our future work. And what is interesting, that these four emanations, four personalities, also highlight the four major stages of Sri Aurobindo's yoga. It's amazing how it fits beautifully. First is mukti, according to Sri Aurobindo. It has to be purification and mukti, liberation, separation of Purusha from Prakriti. Finding your own self, your unborn self, is on one side, and on the other, finding your psychic presence within the heart. That's why Dyumatsena has two boons. One is he gains his sight, his witness quality of Purusha, and that is separation of Purusha from Prakriti. And the second boon, he gets his celestial kingdom. And that kingdom is actually the application of this unborn self through psychic presence in the world and constant conversion of the world into the light of knowledge. And this is kind of significant to understand. So two boons of the king of the Lord of the Divine Mind, and one boon for Ashwapati, 100 sons. Bliss turned into suffering, and suffering turned into bliss, which is interesting because in Sri Aurobindo's boons, when you read in his, it will be about oneness. And this cosmic self-realization in Sri Aurobindo's yoga. First, he had this experience of mukti, nirvana, yes, silent Brahman, which he received from Vishnu Bhaskar Lele. And then the second realization was in the Alipur jail, where he got his revelation from Krishna, the realization of the dynamic Brahman, where he saw Krishna in every form, in every human being. It was present all over around him. So this kind of realization of seeing the divine in everything and in everyone is the cosmic self-realization. It brings a total bliss because you see yourself in all selves and all selves in yourself. There is no more shrinking from anything. So this is the second realization of his yoga. And the third, he worked all his life to bring supramental down. As he said, he caught the tail of the supermind. And that what they did with the mother. And finally, the mother did it. With her hammer, you remember in 1956, on 29th of February, she broke the golden lid, and the golden light rushed down into earthly atmosphere. And she says all the psychic beings who of humanity, in every human being, the soul is shining like 5-volt bulb, and started to shine like 100-volt bulb. All the humanity was illumined from this one act when the supramental force touched earthly atmosphere. And this is something which Aurobindo worked for all his life with the mother. And the fourth boon is still awaiting its realization, the transcendental realization of Supreme Ananda, the descent of the supermind and opening us to the transcendental realms. So here I will stop and open to the questions if you have any. Or remarks, you want to say something, please. We can see here what it is.
Maybe on screen share.
I on screen.
Yeah. There's a couple of questions there. I don't know if you want to read them, Vladimir, if you'd like me to.
Yes, there are many more slides. There is recorded session slides to be posted. Yes, there are many more points which I could not cover because of lack of time. I just wanted to give a framework. There will be many points highlighted during these sessions. 8 sessions are waiting for us. This is the first one. So from different scholars, and Alok will be speaking, and Shraddhalo, and so you will gain a lot of knowledge from this story. I just wanted to frame it into this particular framework of the story from Mahabharata and Markandeya. Any questions? Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, you're gonna get to the questions. Good. So the first one, they just want a translation, a good translation that you might recommend. English.
I do not know. I don't read translations for quite some time. So I have the original text. You can find it also. You just Google Sanskrit PDF Savitri story. It's very, those who know classical Sanskrit, is easy to read. There are no more questions. So
question and answers.
Maybe okay, I don't see it. Yes.
You don't see the Q&A?
Yes, I see. I opened. Thank you. Yes, about Yama's gifts, yeah?
And I don't know if they can see the questions or not, Vladimir. You may want to just
Read
explain.
it, yes. It's a very complex question, and it would be easy if Karundas would speak what you want to say, yes? It would be easy. Would you like to come forward and say your... There's somebody's... yes. You can... we can promote you to panelists, and you can... I promoted you, so you can speak if you want to. Please unmute yourself, yes.
Yeah, no, it was just I came in late, and I saw that you were saying that Savitri in Sri Aurobindo's version does not receive gifts from the Lord of Death, but from the divine. But I mean, it says right there, I think it's 588, that the Lord of Death does give her whatever Satchivan had wished for. So I was just confused about that.
Right. This is the most confusing part because there is no reference to when the voice speaks. We shift to another canto where the boons are granted. And it appears that the being which is there, the divine voice, yes, is not the Lord of Death at all. And in every way, it is not the same being. And this is something which Aurobindo maybe left unsolved. I tried to figure out all my life who it was, that voice, but definitely it's not the Lord of Death. The Lord of Death was devoured by light, according to the Savitri, yes, and his body was devoured, and then she says, "Live still, death, and do still my work." Yeah, and from that time on, that if you missed that passage, then it may look like that is the death who is granting the boons. But if you see that, then you understand that something has shifted altogether. Mm-hmm. So we can look into it again and again. If you have some other ideas, I would be very interested to hear from you.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the Soul's Choice and Supreme Consummation, when she comes to see the divine, she sees that he is he who had shown himself as death. So it is the same, but without the mask.
Right.
It's
right. But that is exactly the conundrum of this thing, that if it is the divine without the death mask, then of course it is the divine being who is the divine life, which turned to be the death, yes, the infinite being, as turned to be the divine being without the mask of death, then it is the divine. There is no contradiction then. But not Yama in the form of death, granting her the boons.
right. Okay, that seems like a longer conversation, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this, bringing, yes, this topic again back. If somebody has this, some ideas also, please share your thoughts. I would love to correspond with you even, or maybe we continue this dialogue again about this very topic, you know, because this is the thing which is not clear in Savitri, at least to me.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Karundas. What is the difference between finding oneself and finding psychic? Don't we find ourselves through psychic? Yes, we find ourselves through psychic. There are two selves. There is one self which is psychic, and the other is unborn self above the head, which supports, which psychic represents in the dynamic form here, in evolutionary process. How much poetic liberty Aurobindo incorporated in his Savitri? Yes, a lot. He built his own his own vision on this story. That's why it is called Savitri, a legend and a symbol. So one thing is a legend and the other is a symbol. So he develops the symbolic part of it in full accordance with his own understanding. And I believe that Savitri itself was showing him that what his role in this reincarnation is about. His and mother's. I think they recognized the source, the eternal source, that these incarnations, these beings, emanations, are actually present in them for this particular work. And that's why he took it for narrating his own experiences. It was his own story with the mother, so to say, eternal story. And it repeats itself again in our time. It's my kind of vision of it, so you may have your own. What could be the best beginning towards Savitri as an individual after the talk, your talk, my talk? Go through all the talks on Savitri, and then we will see better. The best, of course, is to read also Mahabharata story. It will help you in many ways, because there are elements which are kind of becoming clear in Sri Aurobindo's story. And it's like two different languages, two different frameworks, which are supporting the same idea. It's always better to have two or several. Is the establishment of Satchitananda in the humanity the main purpose behind Sri Aurobindo's writing his own version of Savitri? Yes, of course. It is not his own version. It is the expanded version with his own and mother's experiences in yoga. He gives us the whole vision of the manifestation on all the levels of consciousness, starting from the physical and ending with the supramental and beyond in the book 2, and so on. He gives us so much together with this story that it is totally justified. Why was Savitri written? Was it an effort by Sri Aurobindo to correct the Mahabharata? No, I don't think so. It was written, as Sri Aurobindo himself says, as the means for his own progress in his own yoga. Yes, he was rewriting passages many times in accordance with the higher inspiration. The higher he was rising in his consciousness, the more he was embodying in the word. This word is carrying the experience which we as humanity need in the future. This is the book of the future. Can all symbols have both a personal and universal application? Absolutely. It's always like this. And if you don't understand the symbols represented in the story, is it useful to read the stories and allow them to unfold in you, Stacy? Or it is more useful to search out the meaning of the symbol? I think both is good. In my view, Mother suggests not to search for the symbols, not to try to understand with the mind, but to read Savitri in the silent atmosphere, with a silent mind, with attentive and silent mind. And she says that the very story, the very narration, the very mantric poetry will build the means of understanding. It will even build the new neurons in the brain, if needed be, to understand the message. It is more an experience of the higher spiritual experiences rather than just an explanation. Can you speak more about Satyavan? Satyavan according to Sri Aurobindo, he has the whole canto, Satyavan, which is called, yeah? And then he has a canto Savitri and Satyavan. You read them and you will know everything about Satyavan. How he tried to connect heaven and earth, how he tried to connect divine and manifestation of the divine nature. And he says, whenever I focused on the God, the nature disappeared. Whenever I focused on nature, the divine disappeared. So he couldn't hold them both. But now he says, when you are here, when Savitri arrived, he saw her as a golden link, which would permit to connect heaven and earth. And that is what Mother represents, actually. And that is her major work, to save Satyavan in manifestation, not beyond. Are you aware of any version of Savitri or companion works which contain commentary and explanations based on Aurobindo and the Mother's life and writings? Oh, there are many. There are the meditations on Savitri. They are all published. You can find with pictures of Huta. Huta made many sketches. Mother made with her sketches and pictures more than 500 pictures. And these are pictures on Sri Aurobindo Savitri. They will explain, and Mother's explanations are following. We created several films, by the way, and maybe I will send you the link for this, and so you will watch yourself for the first canto, for example, with Huta's pictures, Mother's voice explaining everything, what it means, the symbolism of the story. I just wanted to share the audio recording of the Mother reading this section on the 4 divine boons. Is so magnificent and powerful. Yes, absolutely. There is a reading of the Mother where she receives boons from the divine, and that is the most magnificent reading ever. It's 45 minutes, the full reading. So this would be, you can find it, if you Google it, you will find it somewhere posted. So Rab Satta is raising his hand.
Yeah, tried to bring him over a couple times. I've texted him.
Oh, okay. We can let him speak, allowed to talk.
Here he comes.
Yes, Arob. Okay. You have to unmute yourself if you want to say. You are not unmuted, so most probably it's difficult. So there is in the left corner.
In the chat too, if he wants.
I will ask you to unmute, and so you can click on it, or you send in the chat. Or maybe you, by mistake, you raise your hand. Okay, so then you please send your question if you have, or some kind of comment through the email. So thank you everyone for this beginning of our journey, because it's just an initiation into this marvelous story of Savitri and Satyavan, which is so important for all of us, because it is predicting our future of humanity as a manifestation of a new divine race on earth, with a higher consciousness and more luminous powers. The life divine, the vision of the life divine on earth. So thank you all,
and I would just like to, I put it in the chat box, but just, I was just hearing from Dr. Pandey. He would like to start his session an hour early next week. So we'll be sending out adjustments for that, but that would make it 9 o'clock here on the New York time and 7:30 p.m. in India. So just a quick note. And we just have a wonderful announcement to make. Dr. Sumitra Basu and Dr. Michael Miovich has published their book on consciousness-based psychology. So we will be hosting them on Sunday, February 12th. And they'll be speaking about their book, letting you know how to purchase it. And we're just really honored to announce it to our community and have them come on live and talk about it. So thank you, Vladimir. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful way to begin this 8-part series. We hope you all will stay with us over the coming weeks. Thank you all again. Namaste.
Namaste.